Today on the PIO podcast, I'd like to welcome Robert Siciliano. He's a nationally recognized cybersecurity expert and speaker who spent decades studying how criminals exploit human behavior. With the rise of AI, deepfakes, and increasingly sophisticated scams, the threat landscape is changing fast. Today, we're breaking down what that means for public agencies and how PIOs can communicate effectively, protect their communities. Robert, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much. I appreciate being here.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you being here. You have a very long career in the field. So you spent over 30 years studying criminals, how they think, how they operate. What's changed the most with the rise of AI-driven threats?
Yeah, we, when I say we humans, have been kind of, getting along for the past 30 years and haven't done much in regards to managing risk. And what that truly means is like many of us don't even lock our own doors. Many of us don't have home security systems. Like there are 1 million to 2 million homes burglarized every single year. And most people are using the same passcodes across multiple accounts. We're not using two-factor authentication. Like we're not doing the absolute basics when it comes to managing risk. Like the only reason why we wear a seatbelt is because the car won't stop beeping at us until we put it on. We are risk adverse. We just want to think that all people are good, that bad things aren't going to happen to me. And many of us, to a degree, function in a state of denial that these bad things don't happen in my neighborhood. They would never happen here, and so on and so forth. Why would a criminal hack my identity? And that's just kind of how we are. Like, denial is this wonderful psychological thing that allows us to essentially, avoid worry and fear and anxiety and threats and risk. So functioning in denial is what most of us do. And as a result, here we are, 30 plus years of me doing this. Human behavior hasn't changed at all. But what has changed is criminals, organized criminals, treat fraud and hacking and crime as a business. It's a business. It's a multi-billion dollar business. Most consumers just, we're sitting ducks. And AI comes along, and AI is awesome in so many ways. AI has truly stripped away the clumsy red flags of traditional fraud. In the past, criminals relied on what we would call blunder force phishing, mass blasting emails riddled with scammer grammar. Today, AI allows for high precision impersonation at scale. And criminals know this, and they create deep fakes and voice cloning, and they're duping people for millions to billions every single year at this point.
Right. You talk a lot about the human blind spot. Can you explain what that is and why it's even more dangerous in an AI world?
Yeah. So the human blind spot is basically our biology. It's that psychological instinct to trust others, to trust what's familiar. We are what is considered an interdependent species. We depend on each other for our survival. Man needs woman, woman needs man to procreate. And the basis of that is we got to trust each other. Right? Otherwise, if we didn't trust anybody, then we would never leave the house and the species would just, stop. But that human blind spot, that psychological instinct to trust what's familiar to us and others, is basically this cognitive gap where biological trust, which we all possess, overrides suspicion, leaving the door wide open for all kinds of fraud, AI-enhanced deception. I mean, you name it. Think of like biological default to trust and the psychological heuristics or the shortcuts the criminals use to bypass human logic. Like, how could I fall for that? Well, your blind spot. Biological impulse versus intellectual understanding. It's the internal conflict between our evolved survival instincts and our modern knowledge or lack of knowledge of various digital risks.
So you talk about deepfakes often, and when people hear deepfakes, they think of just fake videos. What are the real world threats you're seeing right now that the public should be concerned about?
I am seeing more and more, like, when you get those wrong number text messages?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, there's a purpose to those. I get, 3 or 4 a day, and I respond to all of them. Most people either delete them or they mark them as spam and block them and so forth. Some people, or many people, respond to them. And the point of all of those wrong number text messages is once you engage, like, hey, Robert, are we supposed to have lunch tomorrow? You're like, I'm sorry, who's this? And you're like, they respond with, oh, I'm sorry. This is Gloria. Hi, Robert. Nice to meet you. And Gloria is like this beautiful, Russian model or whatever. Right. And I'm like, hey, Gloria, it's a real pleasure. What are you, a model or something? And she responds with, actually, I own a cosmetics company. I invest in gold and cryptocurrency. And then the dialogue begins. Well, Gloria is basically being manipulated by a puppeteer. She's a neural puppet, so to speak. And the puppeteer is a human somewhere in Southeast Asia that is managing thousands of neural puppets at the same time. And thousands of Roberts are responding left and right to Gloria.
Mm-hmm.
And that dialogue is a grooming process that AI is capable of at scale scamming millions and millions of people at the same time. And we're seeing like hundreds of billions of dollars lost every single year in these various cryptocurrency romance scams, which they call pig butchering. And when you say, well, I can't be scammed by something like that, you'd be surprised. They're really good at what they do, and they're making a ton of money doing it.
Yeah, years ago, I worked in the law enforcement end of it. I helped a woman through one of our mayor's secretaries who had been bilked out of $40,000 that she had sent overseas to her Nigerian boyfriend. Now, that was the old way, a lot different now. How convincing are today's AI-generated voice and video impersonations? Are we already at that point where the average person can't tell?
So a voice clone is a voice clone is virtually impossible for the human ear to detect. If a voice clone is deployed, it's basically taking seconds of audio and turning those seconds of audio into an entire dialogue. And the human ear cannot decipher real from fake. A true voice clone is impossible to determine unless there's technology specifically designed to detect it, which most of us do not possess that, And so or I get a phone call from a loved one, father, daughter, son, mom, whatever, or colleague, CEO, attorney, somebody that we know their voice. We get a phone call and the initial voice is them in a bit of a panic. And next thing you know, somebody, grabs the phone and it's the voice of a deep voiced man saying, I have your daughter, let's say, and she's been kidnapped. And unless you wire me $10,000, and you hear the daughter in the background literally screaming, Mom, Dad, like, please just pay him. Whatever you got to do. Please don't let him hurt me. Please get me out of here. Like, you literally hear her screaming in the background, which is a voice clone. That is becoming extremely successful. Nobody wants to believe that their loved one has been kidnapped. But when you pick up the phone and you literally see on caller ID, it is your loved one because of caller ID spoofing, and you hear him or her on the phone, desperate, there's a chance you're wiring $10,000.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I get it. There was a CEO, it was one of the companies in Japan that $25 million got transferred from a phone call.
So it was a CFO as a result of, and actually it was more than a phone call. It was so simple and sophisticated all at the same time. So between voice cloning and AI deep fakes, in a form of deep fakes, artificial intelligence, face overlay, where you and I could be having a conversation right now and my face could be, Jeff Goldblum, right? And I'm talking to you like I'm Jeff Goldblum and it looks like Jeff Goldblum and I'm literally using Jeff Goldblum's voice in real time, right? So there's a AI face overlay and voice cloning all at the same time in a Zoom call.
And you'll never know.
And so the CFO is talking to a half a dozen coworkers over Zoom, colleagues that he's corresponded with via email and telephone and even Zoom in the past. And they tricked that CFO into transferring $25 million. And that scam has become the boilerplate moving forward, because if they can make that much money from a Zoom call via technology that anybody with an iPhone can manipulate, it's awesome and awful all at the same time.
Right. So what are some of the most common AI-enabled scams targeting organizations right now?
I would say company officers that are being AI deep-faked and voice cloned, calling on or contacting employees, coworkers, looking for transfer of funds of any kind, looking for sensitive documentation of any kind, getting access to usernames and passcodes of any kind to get access to sensitive information. Manipulation at this point is AI deepfakes and voice cloning to get access to the most sensitive of information and deepest bank accounts.
Okay, so if that's the most common thing, and you have, how is an organization going to protect itself from that happening? What do they need to do?
Well, I think at this point, security awareness training that goes a bit deeper. And when I say goes a bit deeper, it's more than simply just, phishing simulation training, which is what most security awareness training is today. It's essentially recognizing that these things are happening, and the existing compliance-based training, again, phishing simulation training isn't really doing the job, and that companies need to engage in a higher level of what I would call or consider security appreciation training. So if you look at all security as being personal to the employee, like personal security, as you and I know it, is like violence prevention, right? But personal security truly is more than violence prevention. It's like, what's more personal than your identity? Right. And so when you teach and train employees from a personal perspective, right, with the core belief that people protect what they love, like, by teaching someone to secure their child's digital footprint, their own identity, their bank account, their spouse, and so forth, right? You create more secure employees at work. And by doing this, you adopt a methodology that I call the strategic human firewall. So the strategic human firewall is specifically designed so that we recognize risk as it's coming down the pike, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
The idea behind the strategic human firewall is it blocks deception. It's a proactive governance. It's a mindset that turns employees or citizens from passive targets into active detection layers. It's a shift from like, I automatically trust what I see, I trust by default, to I verify everything. The idea is to evolve from security appreciation to what I call, evolve from security awareness to what I call security appreciation, which essentially is the shift from awareness, which is knowing, to appreciation, which is caring. And so when employees, appreciate how security works in their own life, behavior changes permanently. I call this the security appreciation gap. It's that chasm between an employee's intellectual understanding of risk, which essentially is awareness, and the emotional commitment to act on that information, which is appreciation. And ultimately, we achieve what's called the kitchen table effect, which basically is a multiplier effect where successful training ends when the employee goes home and teaches what they learned to their family, cementing those lessons for life.
So what you're saying though is that you also got to get the executives, the leadership, the CFOs, the CEOs to buy into this too, because if they're getting questioned then by an employee to verify information, then that's got to be acceptable. Because years ago, I didn't think, a secretary or a accounts payable person is not going to question a CFO when they say transfer money.
Well, that's it.
Right. Okay. Okay. I get it. All right. So, from a public information officer's perspective, why should AI driven deception be considered a communications issue, not just an IT problem?
Because at this point, we're not really, I don't know that we're even effectively engaging in security awareness training at all. And ultimately, it really truly is a communications issue. We're not communicating security awareness training at all. Like, we're not even addressing the basics at work other than phishing simulation training.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so,
I'll agree with you that. I'll
right,
agree with you that.
we're not addressing the human where they're at in their lives. Like, when I get in front of a live audience, I get, 100 people, 500 people. I'm asked to go speak because the CISO or whoever is like frustrated. And they're saying, look, we just want our people to care about security. That's all we want. We just want them to care. And so my job is to go in and to communicate what security is and what security isn't. And I start that process by engaging in a dialogue. And most security awareness training is a monologue. It's being told what to do. Look out for this, be aware of that, don't do this or else. That's most security awareness training, which is not communication. It's being told what to do. Nobody wants
Right.
that.
Right.
When your loved one, when your child comes home from school, right, 15 years old, and she's had a really bad day, something bad happened at school, or something, not bad, but like, she's bothered by it. And she comes home a little emotional. What do? Do you tell her what to do? Do you yell at her? Do you belittle her? No. You sit her down and you have a conversation with her. Okay, honey, what happened?
Right.
And you begin to engage and find out and flesh out. And as she responds, you respond a little bit more. As she responds, you respond a little bit more. And before you know it, like, you're engaged in this dialogue that, like, before you know it, like, you're hugging and everything makes sense now. And now she has enough information going forward that, like, she knows what to do next. Now, I'm not asking a single, PIO to go out and start hugging their coworkers. But what I am asking is to, like, engage in a little empathy here, right?
Right.
And so if we if we look at like, I think we all have like some type of like all hands on event where like everybody gets in the room, and I think there's like a tremendous opportunity here where like we look at security today or information security, AI, deep fakes and voice cloning. This is like the stuff of like 007. It's like Minority Report, Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible stuff. Like it's Hollywood level security. It's awesome. Like it's pretty awesome what they're capable of doing, right? I think this is a perfect opportunity to engage everybody in your charge in security appreciation training because this stuff is fun. It's interesting. It's more than security, right? This is sci-fi stuff that grabs people's attention,
Right.
and the way that we like start this process is, like everybody has somebody in their life that is at risk in some way. Like think about like your dad that can't stop clicking links, or your mom that every time she gets an email or a pop-up that looks like it's from Apple, she calls the number thinking
Right.
she's getting Apple on the phone and she's talking to, scammers in Southeast Asia. The next thing you know, like they're on her computer and you've got to like react and respond to that now. And so by engaging those with like, this is what's happening and this is how we deal with these things, this is how we fix these problems. Now everybody's like, oh, this is about me. This is about my security. This is about protecting myself and my family. Now they want more information. And that's how you effectively communicate security appreciation versus like sending out a bulletin, watch this video, take this compliance training. Okay, we're good for a year. Like, no. I mean, do you engage in effective, mental health once a year? No. Do you engage in effective physical health once a year? No. This is like ongoing processes that need to be managed in order for us to live quality lives, both personally and professionally.
Robert, you emphasize shifting from trust to verify. What does that look like in real behavior for employees?
Well, I call it the AAA protocol, right? It's basically the manual override. So you get a phone call, you get a text message, you get an email. Number one, the AAA protocol is authenticate. Okay. So don't just automatically trust the information being presented, right? Verify the source. Like, where is it really coming from? Is it really coming from PayPal? Is it really coming from my coworker? Is it really coming from the federal government, right? So that means from that point, authenticate means verify the source. And in verifying the source might mean utilizing what we call OOB, which is out of band verification. It's essentially like the kill switch that can kind of like stop the scam right in its tracks. If a request comes in via email, text, or even live video for that matter, you must verify it through a secondary independent channel. Pick up the phone, call a known number, right? Meet in person, basically like break that scammer's monopoly in that interaction by you going out of band. And then, the second part of the AAA protocol, is authenticate and authorize. Is this request outside the scope of normal operations? Is like what they're asking me something that is normal? Like, is it normal that my boss would be asking me for a password via WhatsApp or text message for that matter, or calling me on my personal phone on the weekend? Is that normal? Or messaging me on Facebook and so forth, right? And then ultimately, like, audit all of this, like look at the whole thing and go through it and what could go wrong here and what is the real motivation of what's happening here. And by authenticating and authorizing and auditing and using an out of band verification, you're actively engaged in the strategic human firewall. Like I would think at this point in you and I and our lives, we're already what we would consider a strategic human firewall. Like when you get an email or a text message or a phone call, you're like already sniffing out the BS. You're already looking for, yeah, no, and so you're already like communicating this to people in your life that you're responsible for because you're already like seeing it as it's coming down the pike. Whereas more people than you can imagine don't, and they
No,
need
you're
to,
right.
you know?
Right. No, I agree. Since PIOs are responsible for educating the public, how do you communicate a cyber threat without causing panic?
We provide the absolute basic examples, right? So like, there's like when you teach, like, for example, when you teach a child about how to prevent an abduction, right? You don't like sit them down and scare the heck out of them and say, listen, you see a white van pull up, just run. Because going forward, they're just going to be afraid of white vans, you know? You engage them empathetically. And when it comes to various cyber scams, I find the most effective way to engage a learner or a listener is to reverse engineer the bad guy's process, is to essentially show how the sausage is being made. And when you reverse engineer their process, show the sausage, the inner workings of it all, it's intriguing to them. They're like, I have inside access to how the bad actor does what they do and how they choose their victims. And they begin to see a little bit of themselves in that storyline and how they would react and respond. And as we relate this to each of us and our loved ones and ourselves for that matter, as we make our own selves vulnerable and how we may be tricked by something like that, we flesh it all out and, kind of humanize it, like we've mentioned. It changes things a bit. It's not do this, don't do that, or else shaming people.
Right.
It's, hey, like this is what I've experienced. This is how I see it. Like this is what people that I know that have been victimized, and this is what's happened as a result. And these are the telltale signs, and just kind of like sit with them like you would a loved one.
I appreciate that. So have you seen some of these agencies where they're doing the deepfake audio where they're changing the language like Spanish and things like that? What are your thoughts about the agencies doing that?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm sorry.
All right, so there are a couple law enforcement agencies in the last year that have recorded their chiefs speaking Spanish when they don't speak Spanish, and they've used the AI to take their voice and then create a Spanish dub, and then it matches it up to the face of the chief, and obviously it's moving the lips and it's doing all that.
Yeah.
What's your thought about them using AI to do that?
So I personally don't have a problem with that. But I think that like there are certain segments of society that consider that cultural appropriation. And cultural appropriation is a thing, and there are concerns of that. And some cultural appropriation may or may not be appropriate. Is it appropriate that we utilize cultural appropriation in a language? Is that problematic? I personally don't have an issue with that. Is that taking food out of the mouth of someone that could do that job? That's how some might look at that. Why don't you just have a translator and somebody that can do that as well and pay them? Or is it much cheaper to do it via AI? I think the inevitability of voice cloning in that regard being used in situations like that is here. And I think that if we continue to fight it, then it's just going to cause fights and angst and anxiety where it doesn't necessarily need to be. I don't think there's anything inappropriate. I don't necessarily believe it's cultural appropriation. I think it's just this is the most effective way to execute a message, both financially and expeditiously.
Do you think it opens up the agency to trust issues in regards to that, where if they're using AI to do this, what else are they using AI to do?
Whenever a new technology comes about, there's going to be all kinds of what if this and what if that. And I suppose people are certainly entitled to their questions and concerns. And I think it's just a matter of effectively communicating those concerns. And ultimately, there are going to be those situations where there's going to be abuse, but I don't know that like that is the motivation of a, agencies whose responsibility is to protect the public.
Okay. All right. So on the other perspective of that, you have a image of a chief of police that is now it's out there and it's asking people to donate money to X cause, whatever it might be, and it's not a legitimate cause. It's a deep fake. How should the agency respond without amplifying the fake?
Well, as quickly as possible, bring attention to that potential to that fraud. And as far as amplifying the fake goes, I think like we've seen, it started off during the 2020 election when Joe Biden's voice was being used in the state of New Hampshire in robocalling, basically dissuading people from voting based on Joe's voice being used with dialogue or verbiage saying such. And that likely had a small effect, but it had an effect. It's when misinformation and disinformation and outright scams are being perpetrated using these various technologies that there needs to be a protocol in place to address these issues. Similarly to, residents receiving phone calls or emails or text messages that matter to pay a toll, right?
Right.
That it's a fraudulent, scam. And as we put those systems in place, these protocols to broadcast these issues, I don't know that we're going to perpetrate the fraud or scams, but more so bring attention to them to inform and educate the public so that they are, what do they say? Forewarned is forearmed.
Gotcha. Robert, if you could give every PIO one mind shift change when it comes to AI and cybersecurity, what would it be?
I would say make all security personal to you first, protecting your own identity, getting things like a credit freeze, updating your passwords, never using the same passcode twice, using two-factor authentication, using a password manager, locking your own doors and having a home security system. Why? Because these are all the absolute fundamentals of personal security. And if you yourself are leading by example and doing all those basic things and engaging in best security practices in your own personal life, then executing that stuff in your own professional life and educating all those around you and communicating security awareness or security appreciation effectively becomes a no-brainer. There needs to be a level of congruency when it comes to being a communication professional. Like as a professional speaker, as a certified speaking professional, I need to be able to personally effectively communicate with my 17-year-old daughter. I need to be able to effectively communicate with my, distressed 58-year-old honey who's dealing with her mom going into assisted living right now, and to be able to navigate all that noise and to be able to effectively communicate in that regard. And if I can't talk to my wife and have an effective communication in putting fires out with her, how am I going to get in front of an audience of 500 people and effectively communicate?
Right.
And if I don't have my own security in order and my own life, who am I to get in front of an audience and talk about personal protection and personal security? So you've got to be the right messenger for the message. And that means being congruent in all aspects of your life in regards to your profession.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you. Is there a question I should have asked? And if so, how would you have answered it?
Well, we were pretty thorough. I would say, going forward, protecting your own identities is such a simple thing to do that most people aren't doing, and it's causing such a mess in people's lives. And if you're not already engaged in something called what's called a credit freeze is a free tool that's offered by TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. This is such a simple 101 thing that like 90+% of the general public isn't engaged in. The credit freeze is free. It locks down your identity. It locks down your credit report. So a lender can't check your credit scores when they receive an application for credit. And that way, like, you're protected from new account fraud when new lines of credit are being opened up under your name. That won't happen if you have a credit freeze. So that is like the 101 thing that everybody should be doing right now to protect their own digital lives and make sure that everybody in their life is doing the same thing.
Yeah, I have one of those on me. And, like you said, it's free. Best thing I ever did, really is. After we had one of our friends have several thousands of dollars taken, as well as credit cards opened up under their name. And when they were telling me how it happened, I'm like, yeah, I gotta lock that down. So that's when I put the freeze on mine.
2 thumbs up.
Robert, final thoughts. What key points would you like listeners to take from the interview?
Listen, I would say listen to this twice. We did a deep dive on a topic that most people don't really spend a whole lot of time thinking about. And it's so new that, a lot's going to change. But the foundation in which we discussed today, I think the fundamentals that we went over, I think that there were a lot of moments in today's dialogue that are worth listening to again. And as they say, repetition is the mother of skill. And I've been doing what I do for, 30, 40 years at this point. And I don't know that you're going to completely absorb the entire thing in 35 minutes. I think if you listen to it at least twice, you're going to pick up a couple of things. Like, I'm a big fan of watching the same movie over and over again, because I always pick up something new like that I didn't see before. And you'll get a lot out of this podcast if you listen to it a couple of times.
Yep, absolutely. As we wrap this up, is there a motto or a piece of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Well, I kind of shared it, and I'm going to share it again. Look, at all security is personal. People protect what they love. And by teaching a person to secure their own digital lives, their child's digital footprint, making it personal about them, making it personal to you, that's how we change hearts in order to change minds when it comes to security appreciation.
Robert, how can people best reach out to you to connect or follow up on whatever you've talked about today?
Sure. I am on all the socials, Robert Siciliano, Siciliano, search that. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, my website is protectnowllc.com. Again, protectnowllc.
And I will add all of that into the show notes. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, sir.